We are live.
Excellent.
Hey, Caitlin.
Hello.
This is Caitlin Hawekotte on You've Got Mel for the second time.
Yes,
I
thank
had
you for
so
having
much,
me.
I had so much fun the first time, and we didn't get to the second topic. So I
Right.
said, I said, why don't we just continue?
Yep.
Right? You've got a baby, and you're in Las Vegas,
hmm
so it's nighttime here in Israel, and it's morning in Nevada or wherever you are.
Yep.
Is it
Exactly.
snowing?
No, it did about a week or so ago. We had one night of snow, which was pretty cool. Yeah. My first, because I grew up in Southern California. So that was my first snow, really.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I've been, to the mountains or something where it has been snowing, but it was the first time I just woke up in the morning and there was snow outside, like somewhere that I was living.
Wonderful. So,
Yeah.
should we do the jingle?
Yes. Let's do it.
Got to do that jingle. It ain't You've Got Mel without the jingle. Are you ready?
Get a
Yes.
chair, grab a seat, or we'll sweep you off your feet. We move, you got Mel. Ease your legs, rest a while. All you gotta do is smile. We're swell, can't you tell you got Mel? When the show begins, you better hold on real tight, or before you know it, you'll be high as a kite. Take a break, settle down. We're the only show in town. SRO, don't you know you got Mel? Give it up, don't think twice. We're a hurricane on ice. What the hell? Give a yell, ring your bell, show and tell. Mademoiselle, give a smell. You got Mel.
You've got Mel. And Mel has Caitlin. Hawekotte.
Yes. Yes.
So, Caitlin, welcome back to You've Got Mel. And that was you were gone just for a week and a half or so, and
Yes.
I missed you.
I missed you too. It was a lot of fun. I loved being on your show the first time too.
We're supposed to be helping each other write books,
Right.
so we're going to talk now about your book.
Awesome.
So, tell us about being good enough.
So it's something I think about on a daily basis. I'm not sure if I shared this last time, but I'll share it again for anyone tuning in. So kind of what got me thinking about the concept of good enough is like when I was going through school, I was always wanting to be the best student I could possibly be, and a little bit of a perfectionist, I would say. And then when I got to grad school, I was in a counseling program to become a therapist. And I think it was the first day of class. Our professor, whom I loved very, very much, he wrote up on the board in big, bold letters, good enough. And he said, this is the only kind of therapist you need to be. Because if you're trying to be a perfect therapist, it becomes about you and not your client. If you're trying to be perfect and great all the time, it's really not about being there for them. But if you learn everything that we're going to teach you and you implement it well enough in order to be helpful to your clients, then it's going to be about them. They're going to feel that it's about them, and they're going to make progress and their lives will improve. And in the course of that, you may become a great therapist. But if your goal is to be striving to be a great therapist or be a perfect therapist, then that's going to get in the way. And I think it kind of also speaks to that idea of being in the flow or in the zone. If you're so preoccupied with the outcome, you probably won't get to it. So I think that was one of the first times that I thought about good enoughness as being a really good thing. And then through the course of that program, they would tell us sometimes, listen, if you've done all of your work up until now and you've gotten good scores on it, the highest grade you can get is a B, unless you want to do this final research paper, and that will make you eligible for an A depending on your grade on that paper. But you don't have to do it. It's totally up to you. So you decide in your life, how busy are you? Is it something that you can handle right now? Will it be of benefit to you? And so I a few times weighed out those pros and cons, like the return on investment. Will my personal life suffer or my work life suffer if I do this in order to just get an A? And will I learn enough through writing this one paper that it really makes it worth it, that risk? And so several times it wasn't. It was like, I want to spend time with my family, or I have a lot going on at work this week, so I'm just going to take the B and just be happy with it. And so it just sort of gradually taught me how to figure out balance and moderation and good enoughness. And ever since then, it's kind of been something that I try to embrace whenever I feel myself not getting started on something because I don't think I'm, going to be perfect at it. And then I just don't do it at all. So I'm trying to subscribe to the idea that starting from a place of being good enough is good enough.
Okay, but this goes against a lot of the things that we are taught and we teach people.
It does. It does. Yeah.
I mean, last night was the Super Bowl, and Tom Brady, he's not just good enough. I don't think he would have won the game if he were just good enough. We teach our children to excel, to win, to be the best. So how does this work?
Yeah, so a couple things come to mind for me. So first, I'll admit I didn't watch a single moment of the Super Bowl, but I was aware that Tom Brady was instrumental in winning it. But I think a few things. One, I think it's redefining what it means to be good enough, because obviously it's like he was good enough to win the Super Bowl. He might even think he could have done better. He might think he could have done even more to really have been perfect. People like him might beat themselves up at the end of a game wondering what more they could have done instead of, not that he does, but
why did I win only 39-7 or whatever it was?
Right. And it could be, that one moment. A lot of times we get stuck on the things we could have done better, which is great because we can improve and those are good things to know. But I think there are a couple things I see good enough used in two different ways. I know I touched on this a little bit last time, but I think it'll be cohesive to have it here too. Sometimes we say, I'm not good enough to go for that job or something like that. We think that I haven't yet achieved a level that I am good enough for it. And then sometimes we do things and we say, good enough, as if good enough is a lowly thing. And so it's just been really interesting to me that it's almost like the moment of good enough is just, it really is just like a moment in time. The moment that you're good enough, but not super great, but good. It's just interesting to me, the way we use this wording. And a lot of times we say good enough when we're saying it like it's not a good thing, but is it good and is it enough? Then it's good enough. So I think that a lot of times we think of it as a negative. So it's weird. On the one hand, it impedes our going for things because we say, I'm not perfect yet, so I'm not going to even try. But then sometimes when we are doing well and we could have done better, even though what we did got us the result we wanted, like say winning the game, we might still beat ourselves up about, well, it was just good enough. I know I could have done it way better. So it's just something that I'm fascinated to explore. Why is it that we look at it in all these different ways? It's like it's a thing to aspire to until we reach it, and then it's not good enough.
Yeah, Caitlin, I love this topic because until the age of about 35, I was a perfectionist, and I was resentful when other people got higher marks or published papers in better journals. But I got out of it. So being good enough, it has a lot of importance. But in our last interview, when I asked you to sing a Beatles song, you didn't you demurred, if that's the right word. You did sing in the end.
Right.
But you were hesitant.
Yep.
What's going on?
It's the same thing. So I'm thinking of this quote, Brene Brown, whose work I love. She has a quote that says, I'm a recovering perfectionist and an aspiring good enoughiest. And I would say that's where I am. I have to consciously, to this day, so that was probably 8 years ago that my teacher put the good enough up on the board, and still 8 years later I have to remind myself, hey, embrace your own philosophy, really go for it. And I think even that in and of itself is like, I'm not perfect at being a good enoughist. I'm good enough at it, but I'm still always trying to improve at it. Yeah, it's definitely, it's so deeply embedded in us to be perfect.
Leonard Cohen wrote a song about the Jazz Police, which
Mm-hmm.
I interpret it as all these people when you're playing saxophone or singing,
Mm-hmm.
these critics, and this of course chokes us up
Yeah.
in the moment when we should be
Mm-hmm.
ourselves and
Mm-hmm.
not caring about what everybody else will say.
Right.
But that is so difficult.
Right. Yeah. Isn't that interesting? And when I think of jazz, to me, again, it's that thing where you have to allow yourself to be in the flow of it and to not get disrupted by, was that the right note? Is that perfect? Is that what are people thinking of it? Because then you'll just flop. And I
Yeah,
think that happens a lot.
you choke and you're not able to be you.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So part of being good enough is being able to be you.
Yes.
But okay, so I'm on a quest to be a good enough writer of children's books that I will be published in the States.
Uh-huh.
But good enough is like to be one out of 5,000 writers.
Right.
There's
Right.
a disconnect here.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and I think that's where it comes in. Like, how do we define it in that circumstance? What would good enough be? Because some people might get published and then go, oh, but I'm not getting a lot of great reviews. We have to remember what our original thing was. What was going to bring you, what did you decide beforehand was what you wanted to bring you contentment? We always keep raising the bar and we forget that we've done that. And so we don't, sometimes we, the whole idea of progress, not perfection. Sometimes we've made significant progress, but because we haven't achieved the next thing that now in our mind is where we should be, we think we haven't arrived. Like a few years ago, I love doing New Year's resolutions and sort of reflecting on the year. And so I was looking for sort of creative ways to do that. And I found a couple of things. One was the idea of choosing a word of the year to kind of guide you instead of
A
having.
word of the year.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like, the word that I chose, I believe my first year, the word that I chose was action, because a lot of times I would think about things, again, because of perfectionism, and I wouldn't take action. So I decided that I was going to, every time I took action on something, I was following through with my resolution for the year. I was becoming the kind of person who takes action on things. And then I combined it with this idea that I came across in a BuzzFeed article called Remember Lutions Jars. And so instead of resolutions where you set the thing that you're going to do and then you look back and beat yourself up over the fact that you didn't achieve it, what you do is every time you do something that you're proud of or is sort of working toward becoming the kind of person you want to be, you write it down and you date it and you put it in the jar. And then when you feel like you haven't done much that year, you go back and you review everything that you've accomplished so far.
And then you feel really bad.
No, then you feel great because, for instance, for me, the example I gave, I wrote an article about it, and the example that I gave was, say I want to give a TEDx talk, right? If I make that my resolution.
I would invite you tomorrow.
Oh,
But
why? Thank you.
yeah, but I lost my license because they fired me from my college. So.
Oh no. Well, I have a
But I
feeling.
invited you to You've Got Mel twice,
Thank
and
you.
that's only happened like in two customers out of 100. So.
No way. Oh, well, thank you. I was already honored, but now I feel especially honored. Thank you. Yeah, so so take the TEDx talk, right? Like, if I told myself this year I want to give a TEDx talk and I get to the end of the year and I haven't quite achieved that, then I would go, oh, I failed. I didn't meet my goal. But if I told myself I want to become the kind of person, and this is also what I've also learned since in Atomic Habits by James Clear. He talks about not necessarily having specific goals, but wanting to become a kind of person who. So for me, it was, I want to become the kind of person who could give a TEDx talk and position myself to be more ready for that. So combined with my word action, every time I took an action that made me more of the kind of person who could give a TEDx talk, I put it in the Remember Lutions jar. So every time I took on another presentation at work, every time I maybe did some more research on a topic I'd love to talk about for a TEDx talk, anything like that. I would put it in there. Any workshops I attended, anything that I was learning and gathering and putting in my toolbox, I put that down. And then at the end of the year, I didn't give a TEDx talk. It's been 5 or 6 years since then. I still haven't given a TEDx talk, but I am so much better equipped because I kept taking little actions and I was making progress, that I still felt really proud of everything that I'd been doing, because that's the journey toward it.
Yeah, but you haven't given the TEDx talk.
Not yet. No. But that doesn't mean it's not going to happen because I positioned myself.
Okay, so Caitlin, somebody would argue,
Mhm.
and I regret now that I don't have a TEDx to invite you, but I have friends,
Mhm.
and you would give a great TEDx talk.
Well, thank you.
But it's a process. If you want to give a TEDx talk, you have to apply.
Mhm.
You have to be out there. You have to do research on which TEDx are looking for speakers.
Mhm.
And being good enough puts you in a situation where, well, okay, I'm
Mhm.
improving.
Mhm.
If you want to speak at TED, you have to be really good. Like, there's
Mhm.
tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands
Mhm.
of people who want to speak at TED, like me.
Right.
But you have to be really good,
Right.
not just good enough, but amazingly good enough.
No, but that's
Is there an amazingly good enough in your book?
no, there can be, oh, you're fantastic, but I think to get in there, again, it's redefining good enough. A lot of times we hear good enough. Like I heard somebody in a documentary talk about someone saying to them, good enough isn't. Good enough isn't good enough. And in my mind, good enough is good and good enough is enough. So if it's good and it's enough,
It's enough
good
for
enough.
it's enough for your your goldfish jar
Mhm.
to say, oh well, I wrote a really nice story.
Mhm.
Oh, I sent a query to an agent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I've been rejected 500 times, but not 5,000 times.
Mhm.
But what 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 I'm worried about
Mhm.
is that when I teach students to be the best them
Yeah.
in this very competitive world, that it doesn't matter
Mhm.
whether you're writing a children's book, speaking at a TEDx, or trying to be the best high jumper on your street.
Mhm.
I'm not sure the good enough cuts it these days.
I will challenge you on that for two, and I
Yeah,
love being challenged on it
please
because it
do.
helps me think about it. Okay, so first of all, I would say that good enough would be, so if the question is, have you reached the level of good enough to be published as a children's author? Well, when you get that book published, then that is the proof that you were good enough to get published. So that is when you are good enough. It doesn't mean you weren't necessarily good enough to be published before then, but when you want the proof of, well, was it good enough? Well, were you published? Then you were good enough. That is sort of that validation. And I think also, when we set goals that are so high, so for instance, if somebody wants to start a YouTube channel and they want to get really good at it, they might look at somebody who's already doing really well and go, well, I don't do it as well as they do, so I might as well just give up now. There's no point. But if they were instead to say to themselves, I'm good enough to get started. I have the tools that I need. I'm excited about it. And if I just consistently keep doing it, perhaps one day I will also achieve what they've achieved. Because what we don't see is where that person started. And everyone has to start from a place of believing that they're good enough and starting with, it's not perfect, but it's good enough. And we're just going to get going on it. And then that's how, like my professor said, how over time you may find yourself stumbling into greatness because you were willing to begin at good enough. You were willing to not be the best at something from the start. And so to me, it's kind of about having a growth mindset versus that fixed mindset. I might not be great at this immediately, but I might show some potential and show that I'm kind of good enough to explore it and good enough to go for things. And sometimes I'm going to fail. Sometimes I won't get picked for the team or whatever, but eventually if I keep at it, I might. And so I think,
Yeah, but what if I'm not?
well, then eventually.
What if I go through college wanting to be on the basketball team?
Mm-hmm.
I'm 5'8". That's not going to happen. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but and I was never picked to be on the basketball team.
Yeah.
So I wasn't good enough. I didn't exercise
Mm-hmm.
enough. I didn't take enough growth hormones.
Well, yeah. No, I think if you were good enough, it would include exercising enough to get to that point, whatever the enoughness is.
Okay.
However, if
Yeah.
you find yourself where you're like, I've done everything that I can. I started from a place of good enough and believed that I could become great over time. And I worked at it and I did enough of all the things that I'm supposed to be doing to get me there. And I'm just not getting there again and again and again and again. I mean, some people, the 500th time is the time they get in. But I think there's also some
No, but I mean, if you continually get rejected, then the little thing in your heart says, in the end, I wasn't good enough.
Yeah. And that's something I still struggle with. I think not all of us in the end will meet necessarily what the standard is in that industry or in that whatever, or in that little niche thing that you're going after. It may not be deemed by the world to be good enough at a certain.
So Caitlin,
However, I don't like to discourage though. I think there's a balance.
No, I'm looking for the balance. By the way, Julie Headland, a children's writer, wonderful lady who was on the show, she said something similar. She said we always make the mistake of thinking that we're here and we want to go there. She said the trick is to always be there.
Yeah.
And this is somehow similar to what we're discussing. I'm good enough right now. Or maybe I can be better good enough. There has to be a good enough and then a better enough.
Sure.
I'm good enough, and tomorrow I will even be better enough.
Right. Sure. It's constantly, you're constantly evolving and improving, I think, but yeah, I think I love what she said, because at the end of the day, so I guess there's that distinction between what the decision makers may think is good enough and what you feel is good enough. So maybe you're not good enough after years and years and years of practice and you're past your prime and you've never made the NBA team. So the decision makers never deemed you good enough, and perhaps you weren't in that department, but you're still at your core. That's a whole other thing. As a person of worthiness, you are good enough always. There's that, and Brene Brown talks a lot about that. Just knowing that you're a worthy person. That doesn't mean that we're always going to get the things that we go after and the things that we most want and desire. It's not necessarily, the world doesn't owe that to us just because we've worked hard at it. It doesn't always pan out the way that we want it to. But I also think that there are things that when we make it too much about the goal also, it can make or break and seem like the be all end all. So say you worked your whole life toward that, toward getting on the NBA team, and you never did. And it's just beyond, it's never going to happen now, right? If you were just to say, well, wow, I wasted 30 plus years of my life. No, you have to have enjoyed what you were doing and felt passionate about it and learned from it and grown from it, because maybe you didn't make the team, but maybe you learned something amazing about striving and about working hard and about being a team player and about facing disappointment and working through it. Like, I think it's still making you a person who is full of experience and wisdom and growth. Like I think
Caitlin, this is the whole thing, we're almost talking about Buddhism now. And Western society is not Buddhism. Western society is having the nicest house on the block, making more money than the Joneses or the Cohens if you're Jewish. And so there's a real dichotomy here. It's not that I'm not agreeing with you.
Yeah, no, totally.
And I think that it is really important to have this. But let me now put it in the question that I ask the entrepreneurs. I believe that less than 1% of startups succeed. Does that mean you shouldn't, if you're a young person and you have a dream and an idea and you've identified a problem that you want to solve and you have this nifty website or trick or patent or whatever, you shouldn't pursue it even though you know that your objective chances are less than 1%?
What I told every student when I was a career coach was, don't tell yourself no, let someone else say it to you.
Oh,
because if we don't
I love it. I love that. Say it again.
Don't tell yourself no, let someone else say it to you. Don't tell yourself no before the world does. A lot of times we stop because
I love that.
right? We cut ourselves off at the start. We don't even, but everyone who does make it had to believe in themselves, had to begin, had to take the chance. But if you tell yourself, the odds aren't really in my favor, forget it. Well, then guess what? You've guaranteed that you're not going to make it because you didn't even try. And a lot of times, like, that's where I want to say, start from good enough. So for instance, here's another thing that just came to my mind too, just a small example of this. I think sometimes we set the bar so high that we fail from the start. So I worked as a server at a restaurant where we would do competitions to sell a certain number of cocktails or something, right? That, you know, everybody wants to get the high ticket that night. And so if they said something like, a lot of times I worked the lunch, the lunch shift, and they would say
Harder to sell cocktails at lunch.
much harder. And as much as people may want them at lunch, it's much harder to get anyone to buy them.
I want them for breakfast, but that doesn't
right. And I'm not a great salesperson, especially when, so they basically, they would say something like, try to sell 5. And I was like, I'm only here for 2 or 3 hours and it's lunch. I'm not going to sell 5. And I would kind of give up from the start. Like, forget it. This isn't going to work. I'm not going to sell 5 or 10. I'm not going to be the winner. So why even care?
Yeah, but you see, Caitlin, there's another way to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
If you hope to sell 5, then you might sell 2.
Right. Yes. And so what I say is, like, what helps me, and this may not work for everybody, but I set the bar lower first. If they were to say, try to sell 1 or 2 this shift, I might end up selling 6 because I'm going around, and then I start getting success and I see a little progress and I go, oh, that worked. When I said that to them, I got the 1, and now I'm not stressed trying to sell 5, and I'm not panicked and desperate. I'm like, oh, I sold the 1. I'm confident now. I could sell another. I could sell another. I could sell another, and I might end up selling a lot more. So sometimes when the bar is set up here, I just go, well, forget it, and I sell 0. But if it were just try to sell 1, we'll see what happens. I think I would outsell myself. You know, I'd set a record for myself. And so that also is what got me thinking about a lot of this. Is we just, like I said, if you want to be a famous YouTube star, and you look at somebody who's already performing at this level, and you go, well, I can't do that, so why even begin? But if you go, just good enough, just be a first day YouTuber, just be good enough to get out 1 video. And because all the people who make it are the people who just did something, did it consistently, learned, adapted, grew, changed as they went along, and transformed. And then people begin to see them. But a lot of times we just see them once they've made it. We don't always see that beginning.
Incredible.
Thank you.
So yeah, the times that I have wanted to be good enough, then sometimes it worked. But I'm wondering now, like, for example, starting to play saxophone at the age of 41. You know, I had no intention of being John Coltrane.
Right.
So I'm wondering if there's 2 kinds of people, though. If there's people that need the 2 cocktails and then succeed above and beyond good enough, and the people who need the really high bar. Maybe there's 2 kinds of individuals.
I've thought about this too. I've thought about this, that there are people who I've wondered, when I've thought about who is this book for, I've often thought there are 2 kinds of people who could benefit from this book. And again, it goes back to the 2 definitions of good enough, that we look at it from different perspectives sometimes. I think there are the people who need to be told it's okay to just start from a place of good enough. And I think there may be people who need to hear, you don't have to be perfect. You can let it go a little bit. Just let it be good enough. Because it's that high achieving, you know, we start to identify ourselves with that high achievement, like how I was with always wanting straight A's. And then I had to be told it's okay. You know, you can let it go, and you're still okay. You're still worthy. You're still good enough. And yeah, so I agree with you. I think there are some people who are more driven by a higher bar. You know, they like that stuff. And then there are a lot of us who I think are intimidated by it to the point of just not even beginning.
Yeah, I think there's a certain type of suggestibility here. I taught my brother-in-law to play tennis, and even when he was playing poorer than I was, he would still beat me, because we'd come to the court and he'd say, "You're going to lose today."
Mm-hmm.
and I would lose.
Uh-huh.
So some people listen to the no's
Yeah.
to such a great extent that they're paralyzed.
Right.
They say, "Oh, you say I'm going to lose, then I'm going to lose for sure. I
Right.
don't have a chance."
Yep. Yeah, there's some people like I'm thinking about in with Clifton Strengths or Strengths Finder. There are two things that come to mind for me. One of them is that there's a competition strength that some people have. It's not one of the most common strengths, but some people really are driven and motivated by competing with other people. I am demotivated by competing with other people
Yeah, me
because
too.
yeah. Yeah. And other people love it. Like and my husband, I think was the same way, like growing up with his brothers, they'd play video games and he'd go, I'll just let you win. I don't even want to try. This isn't fun. You don't always get joy out of that.
Yeah.
Which is why I think there's some people who like team sports and some people who like individual sports. I think that it brings out different things in different people. But then there's also, I was just thinking, something you said made me think about how the most common strength in Clifton Strengths to be in the top 5 results is achiever. And basically, that one is just about people who are driven by wanting to achieve another thing and another thing and another thing. And I think, again, this goes into that mind, like kind of that Western mindset, like you said, more and more and more. And what I hear from a lot of people is that that strength, while it's a strength, can also be exhausting for them because they always feel the need to continue achieving. And that's where, just like I said, we need to maybe redefine how we think of good enough. I think we need to define what we consider an achievement as well. Like going back to that Rememberlutions jar. Is it only an achievement if you met the highest goal, or was each step of the way an achievement in and of itself? And I would say yes.
Yes, I also think that part of the problem that we have is equating money
Mm-hmm.
with success and achievement.
Right.
You should have a chapter on that because
Yes.
I think it's ruinous.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the stuff that I love doing the most are the things that I don't get paid for.
Yep.
But I feel very guilty about that
Mm-hmm.
because I should be paid.
Mm. Yeah, that's the sweet spot, right? When you find something that you love doing so much, you don't even think twice about doing it. And then people also will pay you for it, or you might get people to pay for it. But
Yeah,
yeah, it can be
that's
really,
that's the miracle, right?
mm-hmm. Right.
Like
Yeah, it can.
I'm saying to myself, maybe somebody will come and say, I like You've Got Mel.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to pay you $300 a show. You can interview whoever you want, say whatever you want,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm still going to pay you.
That would be amazing. Yeah, that's
That
totally
would
what
be
you're.
amazing. That would be good enough.
It'd be interesting to see, though. I think sometimes that can put a what do I want to say? Like it can kind of change the experience for you. Sometimes have suddenly attaching a dollar amount to
Of
it.
course, but that's the dream,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Pretend that you're not getting paid. Do whatever you want,
Right.
and you're still going to get paid. So this is the dream. What haven't we talked about?
Mm. I think my mind had started to go somewhere about the money aspect too. I think what I was telling a friend yesterday, who has worked at large companies and then found like, oh, I thought this was the dream and now I'm here, and maybe I was even happier at a smaller one, but at least now I know that. We were talking about the Jim Carrey quote of, I wish everyone could get rich and famous so they know that that's not the answer. And sometimes you just can't know that until you've been there, and then you can say, okay, yeah, okay, now I can go find contentment in other things in my life. So, but I think a lot of us end up just stuck in the phase of striving for the fame and the money. Not everybody, sometimes it's one or the other or both, but we strive so much for it that we don't even know when we've hit a point that we actually are at maybe maximum contentment or fulfillment. Because sometimes I think that moment comes before necessarily the height of wealth or the height of fame. Sometimes I think people find out later, wow, in hindsight, I was really much happier when I was a more of a B-list actor who nobody really knew, but I was getting good work and having fun. And now the paparazzi follow me everywhere. It's that there's that tipping point, right? Of when the return on investment isn't quite what you wanted to
Of
be.
being careful of what you wish for.
Yeah. And so I think I was talking to my friend about being like sort of the CEO of our own lives and setting expectations for ourselves of how will I know when I've achieved success so that I don't just keep moving the bar? Like, what is success for me? Is success um, sort of a moment when I realize I'm doing something I love and I have the freedom to do my own schedule? Maybe that's success. Maybe it's not a really specific dollar amount or something like that.
Look, I can tell you for me, okay, I was fired from two academic institutions,
Hmm.
and I'm a little bitter, but I'm having the time of my life these days.
Right?
I'm
Right.
writing and I'm interviewing and I'm meeting amazing people who live 7,000 miles away. And I
Hmm.
feel like I just could reach over and shake your hand. And that's kind of incredible.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one thing before we go
Mhm.
is you are too young, but when I was a kid, there was, I think it was Parker Brothers, had a board game called Careers.
Uh-huh.
And you have to look this up because for the
Yeah.
book, because in Careers, what was the brilliance of the game?
Mhm.
That you had to decide at the beginning, you had to reach 100.
Mhm.
There was fame, love, and money.
Mhm.
So if you had, and you would like write on this thing and keep it secret, I want 70 money and 20 fame and 10 love. And
Ah.
then you would play this board game in order to amass enough, and nobody would know how much what you're amassing until you
Uh-huh.
win. I have $70,000, I have 10 loves, and I win.
Right.
And this is a kind of a paradigm for our lives.
Mhm.
It's this silly board game.
Mhm. And that all of us have our own idea of it. But the thing
Yeah.
is, so we don't always know, are they happy because they don't have the same thing I'm wanting, or it could all be different. But also, I think what I've been thinking about a lot is sometimes that's even secret from ourselves because we don't intentionally think about it enough ahead of time.
Or
So it's
like or like Kierkegaard, we never know until we've already done it.
right.
Like you
Or
said, like we're always living our lives backwards.
yes. And we also fall into this status quo sometimes too, where it's like, I haven't really thought about what does success actually look like for me. So I'm just going to go off of what society is telling me I should think success is. But maybe who you are doesn't really find joy in the societal definition of success.
So when students would come to you,
Hmm.
would you say to them, do you want in your career a lot of money or a lot of love? Do you want in your career a lot of joy or a lot of fame?
Hmm. Maybe not in those exact terms, but we would always take their values and priorities into consideration. So it would be like, well, what do you value more? Having more time at home and not be commuting, or having a job with a fancy title that now that sounds judgmental, but having a job with a title that makes you feel accomplished and valued. Maybe that is more important to you than having that free time that you could get home an hour sooner for dinner.
Yeah.
And people have to wait. We all have to weigh these things out but if we don't take the time up front to think about, okay, clearly, clear headed now, what are my values, what are my priorities, what does success look like for me, then when things come up, I think we default to, well, I should want this because society says that this is a really good job and a great opportunity. So if you haven't done that work ahead of time and can filter that out, then it's a lot harder to turn down things that seem shiny and great on the surface.
Somebody has to invent an airplane simulation for life. Where you go into the cockpit,
Yeah.
you're a CEO, and you're making this, but you commute 3 hours and you're never home and you don't see your kids.
Hmm.
A lot of these things are really like you say.
Hmm.
We don't know them until we experience them. I think that's the problem of young people.
Right.
They don't know what it feels like to be where they're going to be in 10 years.
Right. Right. And I see two sides to that as well. I always see all the possibilities. On the one hand, I always liked to help people learn as much as they could from people who had come before them so that they can maybe a little bit sooner find the things that bring them joy. Just like Jim Carrey wants people to figure it out before they need to spend years trying to get rich and famous. But at the same time, like I've been saying, experiences are so valuable too. Maybe some of us learn differently. Some people might want to learn via others and then avoid that. Other people want to go through it and feel it and know it for themselves. So it's really hard to say. Like sometimes these are important experiences to
Yeah,
have.
because Caitlin, you and I are both ENFPs or whatever we are.
Mm-hmm.
So, this makes a lot of sense to us, this good enough. Maybe because we're ENFPs, maybe an FRGD would feel differently.
Totally. I think some people would hear what I say and go, what? But I think that as an ENFP, because maybe my perception of what brings value for me in my life, because it's so maybe at odds with the overall societal thing where I've grown up, maybe because it's at odds with it, I'm very aware of how it makes me feel and I've had to think a lot about it. But maybe for some other people that has worked just fine for them and it falls in line with how they would define success, and maybe that is the path that they would take.
So listen, Caitlin, you have to write this book.
Thank you. I'm working on it, but I appreciate the encouragement. I need it.
No, but are you really working on it? Do you have like a fish bowl and you
Mhm.
throw papers and you say, "This is my rememberability"?
I have a proposal in the works, and I have all my chapters I've been sort of fleshing out and figuring out.
Really?
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Are you am I really going to work with you on this?
I mean, it might, as you heard, it might be a process for me. If I will take all the encouragement and support I can get.
I don't know because I also need encouragement with my book.
Yeah, I know. We should be talking about your book too.
Well, maybe some other day you can interview me about my book.
Yeah. Yes.
Which was called How to Make the Right Mistakes.
I love that. That sounds very in line with just my life philosophy of the way I go about life. I like the title already appeals to me.
Yeah. But before we leave, I like, while you're talking to me,
Mhm.
I remembered a story that I had forgotten, and it's going to
Mhm.
go into my book. You can't use it in your book.
I won't use it in my book.
It's going to go into my book. When I was in grade 7, we had a competition in class.
Mhm.
Mrs. Parkinson
Mhm.
memorized the most lines of poetry.
Mhm. Mhm.
And after recess, you could come to her and say, "Mrs. Parkinson, I've learned off by heart some poem," and recite it to her, and then she would write, Melvin, 37 lines.
Mhm.
We were always looking for poems that had just a few words, right?
Yeah.
With many lines.
Yep.
And every time, and there was this guy, Ira, and he would always say, "Mel, how many lines have you learned for the competition?"
Mhm.
I would, like, a real wuss. I would say to him, "I've learned 92 lines." And he would say, "That's nothing. I'm up to 300. So I'd go home and I'd learn all these poems off by heart. And I'd come in, Ms. Parkinson, I've learned 15 poems, and so on. And by the end of the year, I had learned 962 lines of poetry off by heart.
Wow.
I remember the number.
Wow.
So it's like she's reading, the winner of the contest is Melvin, 962 lines of poetry. And then there was a whole bunch of other kids. Ira had maybe 62 lines.
Of course. Yeah.
He'd been, what's the word in English? He'd be pulling my
Your leg. Yeah.
my pulling my
chain.
cord.
Uh-huh.
Word. Pulling my cord.
Pulling your chain, pulling your
He's
leg.
pulling my chain. That's what he was pulling, like for a whole year.
Yeah.
That's gonna go into my book now. Thanks so much for reminding me.
See, maybe you are a bit driven by competition. Maybe
Well, until I was about 35, I was. But then I became more of a good enough. I mean, I'm still competitive, but I was crazy when I was younger.
And for some people too, maybe they're not always competitive with others. I know my husband talks about being competitive with himself. There's that too.
Yes.
Do yourself. Yeah.
Yes. I love your husband. Go get him.
He's watching the little one right now.
So I think that that he's right. What I tell my students is to be the best themselves that they can be.
Right.
the competition in life is only against yourself, and this is very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Because in class and in gym and whatever, we're always, he got 5, I want to get 7.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the right way to live.
Right.
But I mean, like I'm 69, so I when I was 35, I started to be less of a perfectionist and
Mm-hmm.
more of a good enoughologist.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I love it. So listen, I really want to help you on your book, not because I'm an altruist, because I think it's a great subject,
Thank you.
and I need help on my book.
Yep. Well, let's see how we can help each other out. Let's do it.
Okay, so Caitlin Hawekotte, this is amazing to see you. I'm not sure that I can have you on a third time in the near future.
That's okay.
But,
I understand.
but before we go, you know what I'm going to ask you now?
What is it?
Um, what are you going to do that is going to challenge your good enoughness?
Two things come to mind immediately. One is actually follow through with writing the book. Because
No,
I
I'm
think,
saying right now on
oh,
camera, Kate.
right now.
Like recite Mary Had a Little Lamb, or the Jabberwocky, or sing another Beatles song.
What is, I can't even think what I'd be good enough capable of. I feel like you have something in mind. Do you have something in mind?
No.
I'm trying to think.
You could recite a nursery rhyme. I think that would be really splendid.
Nursery rhyme. I'm trying to think which ones I even know.
Look, in order to write a good book, you have to know nursery rhymes, Caitlin.
I know, but my mind goes for, I get on one topic and I'm rolling with it, and then I just draw blanks, right? Because see, you're challenging my good enoughness, because I'm like, oh, I can't think of anything at all that I would be good enough at doing. It's just it blanks out. Let's see. I'm trying to think of things that the ones that I've loved. My son rarely will sit for books, because I should be better at this. I should know. What if
Why is this so hard for you, dear?
I don't know, because I'm on the spot, so I literally have my mind is a blank.
No,
Joke.
because you have all of these dopamine receptors in your forebrain.
I know.
Thinking, oh no, what if I recite Humpty Dumpty? What are people going to think of me?
Right. See,
Or Jabberwocky backwards.
Yeah, singing last time helped, because it was just nice to let go and not worry about it.
Yeah. So what did you sing last time?
Last time I sang Yesterday.
Okay. So what are you going to sing tomorrow?
Tomorrow?
Yeah, just like a free song. What are you going to do tomorrow in song?
See, I have blanks. I need to prepare. Let me see.
No, you don't need to prepare.
I do. See?
You just need to be good enough.
Okay, well, maybe I could. I'm trying to think what my son is singing all the time.
I'll start this in the morning. I'll start this for you.
Yeah.
Tomorrow morning, I will wake up at 6 a.m.
I'm just free, and I will eat my breakfast and make my son some honey toast.
And then I'll go outside in sneakers, and
is this an actual song that I don't know, or are you just making this up?
it will be.
Oh, okay. And we will walk to the desert where he'll climb.
Or walk into the desert sands and spend $1 million on the one-armed bandit. And then
And then, and then We will eat the blueberries that I packed in a bag for him. And he will sing all his little songs he makes up all the time better than his mama can.
Okay. Okay, so that was good enough.
Yeah. I used to take improv and I was just thinking to myself, I'm rusty. I need to go back. I need to take it again. You challenged me. It's good.
Okay, dear, this was a lot of fun. So I'm not. You don't have to sing another Beatles song because you did that very, very well, and
Thank
that
you.
was entirely good enough for me.
Thank you. Thank you. This was
Caitlin
wonderful.
Hawekotte, this was wonderful. Always great to see you. And
Thank
I
you.
will be disappointed if we do not organize some mutual book writing club.
Yeah, we'll figure something out. I think like I said, it's at top of mind for me. So we'll work something out.
And we're both brilliantly unemployed right now. So
Yeah. We're just doing what we feel like. All right.
take
Thank you.
care.
Thank you so
Love,
much.
love to
Bye.
your family. Bye, dear.
You too. Bye-bye.